Hello, everyone. Welcome. Happy Lord's Day. Hope you guys are doing well. Good evening. We are continuing in our sermon series in the Hall of Fame of Faith and focusing now on Gideon. Got to verse 32 where they just kind of start listing off all sorts of different spiritual figures in the Old Testament. There's like 5 in one verse, so I'm going to do a little sermon on each of them. What's up, Violent Midget? Yes. T indeed. Guys, tonight we're doing a Musa Taekwon Yin. It's kind of a reddened, roasted Taekwon Yin. It's a little bit of a new take on an old tea. So that's what we're doing. I haven't loaded this up yet, so you'll get to see me pour my first cup. Man, struggling already. What's up, Amaras? Smells like exegesis o'clock in here. Man, Amaras is ready. Good to see you, my man. We'll let that go a little bit. Not too long, not too long. Good to see you guys. And yeah, we'll pour our first cup of tea and get going. I'm excited. Got going before 5, so that means we should be able to get I don't know if a full 2 hours for sure, but pretty close, I think. And yeah, I think we're already set up for success. One thing I want to reference today, James B. Jordan wrote a commentary on Judges, and you can download it for free off of Biblical Horizons website. So we downloaded it. We're going to go ahead and go through the chapter on Gideon. You can already see that reddish color. Okay, just trying to make sure you can see most of it. Psalm 22. Hey, PT, thank you for streaming. Got a question for you. When Jesus was tempted by Satan, Jesus was fasting during that time, right? I'm genuinely curious of the science in fasting and its effects on the brain or dopamine. Any thoughts on that? Yeah, I actually have a lot of thoughts on that. Very nice. Done making our tea. Cheers. Just wanted to show you. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. Let's go ahead and head into Logos. So Psalm 22, it's a really good question. And I've done a little bit of research on fasting and intermittent fasting. Okay. So fasting is pretty good for the body up to a certain number of days. And again, it's just a physical material thing. on what impacts it can have on the body. So it causes your body to essentially start recycling some of its, negative, your cells get dirty and things like that, right? So you get, I think it's called autophagy, and they start eating up the cells, the nasty cells that need to regroup, if you will. So there's some good stuff on that. And yeah, fasting generally is pretty good for you. In fact, a lot of people have made a diet out of intermittent fasting and just not eating during certain periods of each day. And you can almost eat whatever you want on the other periods because of how fasting kind of works on the body. So fasting is pretty powerful from a physical standpoint. And a lot of secular people who don't believe in anything about God would affirm that. Okay. So yeah, it has pretty profound effects on the body. Now, as far as the brain goes, I think fasting for a long period of time would put you into ketosis, and that ketosis is supposed to be very impactful for the brain. A lot of people say when they're in ketosis that they feel more clear-headed, and that could be a potential impact. Dopamine, I mean, in fasting, there is such thing as a dopamine detox or a dopamine fast, and some people do that sort of thing as well. And so if you dopamine detox or dopamine fast, you're trying to fast from dopamine related activities. So that can be very helpful. But I think just not eating food, well, I wonder how much dopamine response there is with not eating food. And just so you know, a guy named Andrew Huberman, I really like his channel. He has a lot of information on these sorts of things. So you can check out Andrew Huberman on YouTube. But generally, I would assume that that's pretty good for you as well. And I'm more interested in the spiritual component of fasting, because in the spiritual component of fasting, you are essentially, the way I've put it before, I don't know if this is good or not. I still haven't formulated my final opinion on it, but it's something like saying no to the flesh in order to say yes to the spirit. And when you do that deliberately and purposefully, it has powerful effects for your own spiritual growth, right? Like, it seems to make it to where you have easier access to God, and you're more sensitive to the promptings of the Spirit. And so I think it actually has a pretty decent benefit, just spiritually speaking as well. So yeah, hopefully that helps. Psalm 22, there's a lot more information on fasting and its positive benefits for the body. Good question. Amaras, got any good resources off the top of your head on the Transfiguration? Just general sermons, commentaries, articles, etc. And not on the Transfiguration itself. I would be starting from scratch, so not off the top of my head. I could do a search in my Logos library and do a little research on it and all that type of stuff, but I can't think of anything off the top of my head where I'm like, oh yeah, on the Transfiguration, you got to read XYZ, because it's not a event that I've studied a whole lot. I preached through Mark, and so I studied a little bit when I preached through Mark, but not a whole lot. And so yeah, I'm sorry, not off the top of my head. What's up, Cal Magic? Good to see you. I practice intermittent fasting. 16-8 helps control blood pressure and blood sugar. So 16-8 is you don't eat for 16 hours and then you eat for 8 hours. And so if you're sleeping for 8 hours, then you just have to pick 8 hours either right when you wake up or right before you go to bed that you're not going to eat. Okay? And that'll be your 16-8. So let's say some people practice it right when they wake up. They've already fasted for 8 hours while they were sleeping, and then they choose to not eat for another 8 hours. So you wake up in the morning, you basically skip breakfast, and then you can kind of have like a late lunch, and boom, you've not eaten for 16 hours. 8 while you're sleeping, 8 in the morning. You can also do the other thing on the tail end. You could eat right when you get up, have a big meal, store up, and then, once kind of like a midday hits, then you skip dinner type of thing. So you're fasting on the front end of your sleep cycle. I've found it easier to skip breakfast and do a 16-hour fast up front, and then just have like a late lunch, and then you can eat however much you want or whatever for dinner. So yeah, fasting has a lot of positive benefits on the body from what I've researched. Okay. I don't know everything. Cal Magic, I have 2 meals a day, one at the beginning and the other at the end. Okay. So Cal Magic breaks open the middle. Okay. Skips lunch. Interesting. Okay. I found if I eat breakfast, it makes me hungry like all day. Whereas if I skip breakfast, then I'm usually better set up to fast. But I will tell you this, if I drink a lot of tea and I've skipped breakfast, it makes me not feel good. It makes me feel sick. So you got to be careful with it. Ooh, there you go. Yeah. Amaris, I recommend Don Whitney's Spiritual Disciplines. He's excellent on the purpose and nature of fasting. Also pretty sure has free articles on it online. Yeah, pretty cool. There are, so far as I can tell, both experientially, personally, and biblically, I think there are a lot of spiritual benefits to fasting that go far beyond the physical benefits. Psalm 22, thank you, PT, for your explanation. I wonder if it rewires our brain or resets our dopamine or something sciencey like that. I think if you're fasting from dopamine itself, absolutely. I would recommend you guys to check out dopamine detox on YouTube. You can just type that into YouTube. There are plenty of videos on doing a dopamine detox. And certainly, while Jesus wasn't unplugging from the internet when he was fasting, he was fasting from food, and there was a bit of, he's focusing on spiritual things, spiritual matter. So I've read quite a few books that have to do with these sorts of topics. And yeah, I can't quote off the top of my head, it gives you this exact benefit or something like that. But there's a lot of evidence to suggest that it's pretty powerful for us. Got you. Okay. Cal Magic says, for me, having good breakfast lasts me about 6 hours. It works perfectly. I'm working towards moving to 18.6 in the near future. Very nice. Yeah, it can be a pretty good one. Pretty good one. All right, guys. So we've hit that spot in the book of Hebrews where he now stops going into specifics in regards to these figures, but instead just generally hits them all. Okay. What more shall we say? For time would fail me to tell of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, and Samuel, and the prophets. Okay? So, most preachers just skip through these areas, but I'm going to preach one sermon on each of them. Okay, so one on Gideon. That's this upcoming Sunday, Lord willing. One on Barak. One on Samson. One on Jephthah. Then we're going to take a break for Advent, and I'm going to preach 4 sermons on Advent. Then we're going to preach a Christmas sermon and a New Year's sermon. And then back on the 8th, I guess, of January, I'll do David, Samuel, and then the prophets. Okay, so that's the plan. So I'm going to be spending weeks and weeks on this single verse. But of course, it's not just this verse. I'm going to be running back to the Old Testament events themselves. Okay, so it just goes with how I've been preaching this series. I haven't just been talking about faith in general. I've been deep diving into each figure, at least for one sermon apiece, right? Which doesn't feel like much of a deep dive at the end of the day, but it's the best I got for right now. And so that's what we're going to be doing. And I'm going to focus on Gideon for this upcoming Sunday. Okay. So this would be a perfect time. Ooh, this person needs to get banned. Hold on a second, guys. Let's see. Report, put user in timeout. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, I timed it out. Cool. Well, did that show up in the Restream chat or no? I didn't see it in... It got blocked on YouTube, but I don't know if it got blocked on Restream. Let me find the chat here. There's some new kind of bots over on YouTube. You gotta be careful for. Doesn't look like it did anything. Okay, that's good. Good. Sorry, guys. I'm just trying to do mod stuff. Mod gonna do mod stuff. Oh, dear. Control Z, Control Z. All right, it's good enough. I'll stop there. Cool. And then can this user... Can I ban this user? It's Vector Slacken. That's right. He's not even here. Hide user on this channel. I guess that's as close to a ban as I can get. Amaras. I want you all to know I'm eating my steak dinner while talking about the benefits of fasting. I love it, Amaris. That's amazing. That's absolutely incredible. Guys, you can't make that stuff up. Amaris tearing it up. What have I done? Guys, I'll tell you right now, I don't know what I'm doing over on the OBS side of things. Okay, good enough. Good enough. We'll leave it there. All right. So focusing in on Gideon, there's a couple things you can do here. This is a great opportunity to use your Bible dictionaries, okay? You can really shortcut a lot of your sermon prep if you throw a figure like this into your Bible dictionaries, and you're going to get a lot of hits. Fact book is a great place to start as well. So I'm actually going to start with the fact book because I think the fact book really is kind of a shortcut to the Bible dictionaries. So let's just throw Gideon here. And we'll see what we get. We're going to get all the passages, Bible dictionaries, all that good stuff. What up, Edgemark? Good to see you. Welcome, welcome. How are you? Happy Lord's Day. I hope you're having a good day. And let's see. Gideon the Judge. Boom. Biblical account. Judges 6:1 to 8:35. So there we go. Now that's too large a pericope to preach on, but we can go ahead and throw it in our notes right here. No problem. No problem. There we go. So we're going to have to figure out a way to summarize his life. You know, all the major events. So I might read it and put together my own summary. And that would probably be good. I might start with just going through the accounts that are given me in the fact book. And I might go from there. So we've definitely got some options. Yeah, let's go ahead and start with this one. Gideon the Judge, also known as Jerubbaal, 6th judge in the book of Judges, lived circa mid-12th century BC. Requested divine signs before agreeing to serve as God's instrument to deliver his people from the Midianites. So remember, this was when he put the wool out and he said, God, may the ground be dry and the wool soaked. And then he did the opposite the next night. And he said, let the wool be dry and the ground soaked, right? So that's an interesting account. There's got to be something going on there, right? Midianites, biblical account. Detailed description of the Midianites' oppression of the Israelites precedes the account of Gideon. Judges 6:1 to 10. Okay. Gideon's call. Oh, man, a good breakdown here. Look at this already. The Lexham Bible Dictionary. Good breakdown. Gideon's call. Gideon's destruction of the Baal altar. And then Gideon's battle with the Midianites is detailed through chapter 8. And you can see then Gideon's pursuit of the kings of Midian through 8:21, and then finally the ephod and the death notice. Okay, so the ephod is probably going to be an interesting as well. So let's read this whole thing. This is probably just a perfect summary of Gideon's life. Make sure we get all the details for those who don't know and are unaware. Gideon was called while threshing wheat near his father's terebinth tree in Ophrah. The angel of Yahweh appeared to him and told him that Yahweh was with him. Gideon questioned the reality of God's presence with Israel, since under the dominion of the Midianites, the people had not seen Yahweh work any great miracles. Okay. When God exhorted Gideon to save Israel from the Midianites, Gideon immediately informed Yahweh of his inadequacies and requested that God give him a sign. Okay, so let's go. Called near terebinth tree. I feel like it's a very specific tree. We can look it up and see if there are any correlations anywhere. And then we can also look up Ophrah. See if there's significance there. Angel of the Lord. Gideon questioned the reality of God's presence since they had not seen any great miracles. Okay. And we could study the angel of the Lord in this account. is the angel of the Lord here an obvious reference to Yahweh or not? There are some that are more obvious and some that are less. Psalm 22, after asking about fasting, says, I'm going to eat an ice cream sundae with fudge and caramel. And then is that not like this? Oh, man. Guys, all we need is a steak dinner, a little bit of ice cream sundae with fudge and caramel. And, you know, that fasting, even after Pastor Tanner told us about all the spiritual benefits it provides, you know, who needs that fasting thing? You can always fast tomorrow. Brutal. Brutal. Okay. Requests a sign. That's the mark here. Then Gideon prepared an offering. I guess, oops. Let's, selection. I just want to copy this. Let's see if this works. No. Cal Magic, Angel of the Lord language is a sermon or two all by itself. He's not wrong, guys. He's not wrong. We know I'm not trying to drag this out. I actually considered not preaching all of these individual accounts on their own. Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, and Samuel, and the prophets. I actually considered stopping our series after Rahab and Jericho. But I was talking with Jess, just trying to sense where people are at, and I wanted to keep going. So that's where we're at. Man, that's good tea. Woo! That's the Musa Taekwon Yin. Man, that's good. Very nice. Okay, so we're going to keep going here. He questions God. And that's Judges 6:13. This is Judges 6:11. This is Judges 6:12. And then this is 6:14 to 17. And don't worry, guys. We'll read the account. Some of you are like, he's not even going to read it. I'm going to read it. Edgemark says, Pastor Deucin was trying to pass off iced tea as tea. I told him he better watch out before you school him on what tea really is. Oh, man. Well, iced tea, I've made iced tea before. So you could take any tea and ice it and see how it tastes when it's cold. So if it's a genuine black tea that's made and then iced after that, that could count, right? But it certainly isn't tea's greatest form. I'll give you that. That's funny. How's Dustin doing? I hope he's doing well. It's been a while since I've seen him. What if you had a cup of sugar? Okay, that's out of bounds. Now, iced tea doesn't necessarily have to be sugar added. But once you start dumping sugar in it, yeah, that's a problem. Then that's a problem. Oh, man. Getting prepared an offering. When the angel of Yahweh touched it with the end of his staff, fire came out of the rock and consumed the offering. Immediately the angel disappeared. So this first sign is different. Okay. Offering. Offering, rock. Offering, and then fire from the rock. So I'm going to move this wool thing down till later. Cal Magic, sweet tea is the official drink of the Bible Belt. Yeah, It's just a shame that you added sugar to it, because it didn't need it. It's better without. It was better without. Gideon despaired over having seen the angel of Yahweh face to face, but God assured him he would not die. As a result, Gideon built an altar and named it Yahweh is Peace. Okay, that's good. Good start. Second half of 6. Now, what did he tell him here? That God was with him. So he didn't really command him to do anything yet, so far as I see. And again, we'll read the account in a second. I just want to read through what it says here. If you go into the narrative with a broad summary that's helpful, it's going to kind of orient you to the text. I don't know if you've heard of some reading strategies for reading like textbooks and stuff, but if you read the table of context in depth and just kind of skim through the pages and look at all the headings and try to think actively about where the headings are and things like that ahead of time, before you start reading it, you're going to be helped so much to be able to have greater retention and greater speed as you read. So that's kind of what we're doing here. We're orienting ourselves. We know in the beginning of chapter 6, God essentially calls Gideon, okay? And then he destroys this altar to Baal. Yahweh instructed Gideon to destroy his father's Baal altar and Asherah image and to build another altar. He was instructed to use the wood of the Asherah image to offer a burnt offering on the altar. Afraid of his father's house and the men of the city, Gideon and 10 of his servants carried these instructions out at night, okay? When the men of the city awoke and discovered the destroyed altar, they demanded that Joash, the Abizarite, Gideon's father, hand over his son so that they could execute him. So this is serious business, y'all. Joash denied their request and told them that if Baal was a god, he could defend himself. Look at Joash, man. Joash then changed Gideon's name to Jerubbaal, which means let Baal contend. Interesting. Okay, that's a cool account. Destroys altar to Baal. And burns Asherah wood for new offering on altar to the Lord. All right, Gideon's off to a good start, guys. Let's see what happens. When the Midianites and the Amalekites invaded and encamped in the valley of Jezreel, Gideon, empowered by the Spirit of Yahweh, sounded his trumpet and sent messengers to Manasseh, Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali. The Abizarites and the 4 tribes he summoned gathered with him. Gideon again requested a sign that Yahweh would use him to deliver Israel. So he wants another sign. Judges 6:25-32. And now, filled with the Spirit of God. That's an important detail. Need to remember that. He's filled with the Spirit. The indwelling of the Spirit in the Old Testament often looks a little bit different than it does in the New Testament. So it's something to note when you see it. He's filled with the Spirit of God. And he gathered, sounded his trumpet, and sent messengers to Manasseh, Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali. Then the Abizarites, and I'm just going to copy this right here. I still have these on from when I was working on my paper. So I like to do on my toolbar right here, I like to do a quick access to the program settings so that I can easily turn citations on and off. Because sometimes I want them and sometimes I don't. So boom, now I can copy those without citations. Gideon again requested a sign that Yahweh would use him to deliver. Okay, there you go. Gideon asked Yahweh to soak fleece with dew, but to keep the ground dry. God granted this. Desiring one more sign, Gideon asked Yahweh to do the opposite. The next morning, the fleece was dry and the ground was covered in dew. So that's the one I had remembered. So that's Judges 6:36-40. See, when you interpret all of these things too literally, it's just weird, right? They're out there requesting multiple signs. Is God granting them? Is he not? We don't know. Is he mad? Should you request signs? You get into all these weird questions. And I just don't think it's the primary emphasis of the text. You know what I mean? That's the thing that I think is most important to recognize. I almost made a comment today when I was talking about Rahab. We finished talking about Jericho. We finished talking about Rahab. And I think Rahab deceives because she's representing the spiritual side of a human being, denying the fleshly side of a human being, right? That's one representation or application. It's not the only one. But in that sense, then it's don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, right? You have... Satan is deceptive, and so you have to be crafty in dealing with Satan because he's going to try to use your flesh against you. And so you have to be aware of what he's trying to accomplish by the things that are impacting you from without, right? It seems so obvious once you go through the spiritual understanding of the narrative. So I think it's really helpful. Now all of a sudden you're not asking questions like, why does God commend Rahab when she lied? It's like, that's not the focus, you know? All right, let's keep going. Gideon and his army encamped against the Midianites at the well of Harod. God reduced Gideon's army to 300 men in order to prevent Israel from claiming glory for itself. So, reduce army to 300. Judges 7, 1-7. God commanded Gideon to go into the camp of the Midianites and the Amalekites. Gideon and his servant Purah entered the enemy camp, where they overheard a man discussing a dream with his companion. In the man's dream, he saw a loaf of bread tumbling into the Midianite camp and knocking down a tent. His companion immediately interpreted the dream as the Midianites being delivered into the hands of Gideon. This is interesting. So Midianite dream and interpretation. That's weird. And so we'll put that's in 10-13. Judges 7, 10-13. Okay. Always pay attention to the weird things, guys. Oh, through 14, actually. Boom. Upon hearing this conversation, Gideon worshiped Yahweh and returned to prepare his men for battle. So they spied them out again. Okay. Gideon and Purah spied them out. Judges 7, 8-9. All right. Gideon divided his men into 3 groups and gave each man a trumpet, a pitcher, and a torch. This is such a weird account. Oh, I can't wait to dig into the details on this. What is going on here? Yeah, I love it. The 3 groups went down. I wanted to preach a whole series on Judges. I actually wanted to do the book of Judges, and maybe I still will, but I didn't want to skip each of these narratives. I think this is cool. The 3 groups went down to the outpost of the camp, blew their trumpets, broke their pitchers, held their torches, and shouted, "A sword for Yahweh and for Gideon." When Gideon and his men blew their trumpets, the men of the camp began killing one another, and their armies fled. This is interesting. So the battle ensues, 16-22. And they do 3 things. Blow trumpets, broke pitchers, held torches. And that's going to be 16 through 22, essentially. Cal Magic Judges is a great book. Spent about 3 months last spring working through it. That's fantastic, Cal Magic. Really cool. I just hope I can do some of these accounts justice. I'm not going to preach the full book. I will do that eventually. Here's what I'm thinking, guys. I'm thinking I finish Hebrews and I go into the Gospel of John. And the reason I'm thinking that is I started with Mark, but I'm in a very different space now than I was when I started Mark. I did Mark, Ecclesiastes, and now Hebrews. And once I'm done with Hebrews, I'm thinking I go to the Gospel of John and try to dig into detail into all the interpretations of it. And then once I'm done with John, I think I go back to Judges. And we treat Judges in full. That's at least my thought. How do you guys think that'll land? Think that'll be okay? I've been trying to go New Testament, Old Testament, New Testament, Old Testament. And I know that sounds weird because I went Mark, Ecclesiastes, Hebrews, and then you would think I'd go straight to Judges. But we've been digging so much into the Old Testament figures. This is like our 16th, 17th sermon, if not more, on these Old Testament figures that I don't want to jump straight to an Old Testament book. I feel like we've been treating a lot of the Old Testament by treating Hebrews. So I want to go to John. That's my thinking. I don't know if it makes a ton of sense, but that's the direction I'm thinking of going. All right. As Gideon's army set out in pursuit, Gideon sent messengers to the men of Ephraim requesting their assistance. Now, were the Ephraimites originally gathered? No. Manasseh, Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali. So originally, the Ephraimites were not utilized. Cal Magic, kudos to you for integrating the Old Testament into your sermons in the New Testament. Well, thank you, Cal Magic. I appreciate that. But been a part of our channel for long enough. You know exactly why I do that. It's very important to me. It's very, very important. So I appreciate the support. The men of Ephraim took control of the watering places in front of the Midianites, captured and killed 2 of their princes, and brought their heads back to Gideon. When the men of Ephraim became upset because Gideon had not invited them when he first attacked, oh, look! Gideon pointed out that their capture of the Midian princes was more important than his acts. That's hilarious. That's actually really funny. Now, wait a second. Why are you asking for our help now? You didn't need it before. Look, I made some mistakes, but look at the great contribution you made. Praise to God. That's awesome. That's awesome. Man, Judges is amazing. So, request help from Ephraim. They do, but are mad. They weren't initially invited. Okay. And that'll be Judges 7, 23 to 8:3. Judges 7:23 to 8:3. Did I get that right? Yeah, that's correct. Cool. All right. Continuing on. Gideon and his army continued chasing after the 2 kings of Midian, Zebah and Zalmunna. During their pursuit, Gideon and his men stopped at 2 cities to request bread. When both cities denied their request, Gideon swore vengeance. He promised the men of Succoth that he would return and beat them with briars and thorns. He promised them of Penuel that he would return and tear down their tower. See, that's interesting as well. Like, that doesn't seem super godly. I wonder if in the sermon I should bring up all of the morally questionable things that happen. He keeps questioning God and wants multiple signs. He seems to want reprisal here, and yeah, it's just odd. After Gideon's army defeats the two kings, Gideon fulfilled his promises to the men of Succoth and Penuel. Gideon interrogated a man from Succoth to learn the names of Succoth's leaders. He then interrogated the kings of Midian, who admitted to killing his brothers. When Gideon's firstborn son, Jether, was afraid to kill the kings as ordered, Gideon carried out the slaughter himself and took the ornaments from their camels' necks. Wow. So, requested bread at Succoth and Penuel, swore vengeance, and executed it when he was not given his request. That's probably the best way to think about it. That'll be Judges 8, 4-21. Cal Magic, in spite of his failures, Gideon keeps his eye on God, which is paramount, just like David and the kings. It was only when they turned to other gods did God draw the line on them. No, it's very true. Very, very true. But, so I agree with all that, but I also think that the morally curious examples we have in the Old Testament are often indicative of some sort of unique spiritual truth or reality that we should be attending to. Now, the ephod. When the Israelites asked Gideon to rule over them due to his victory, Gideon refused and informed them that Yahweh would be their ruler. However, he requested they bring him the earnings they had gained from the plunder. 8:24. The men gave him 1,700 shekels of gold earrings, with which Gideon made an ephod and erected it in the city of Ophrah. This ephod became a stumbling block for Gideon and for all of Israel. Interesting. This is 8:22-27. The story of Gideon closes with a summary of events. Israel enjoyed rest for 40 years during Gideon's time as judge. Gideon had 70 sons, including Abimelech, the next ruler of Israel. Gideon was buried in his father's tomb in Ophrah. After Gideon's death, Israel returned to Baal worship and treated Gideon's family with contempt. And does that wrap up our narrative? Yeah, through 8:35. So 40 years. He was a good judge. Okay, good judge for 40 years. "70 sons." That's intriguing to me. 70 is an important number. Buried in Ophrah. Israel returns to Baal worship after he dies. And this is Judges 8. Yeah, 28-35. Boom. Okay, now let's read the account ourselves. Edgemark, a good judge, but was he a good father? Expect nothing less from you, Edgemark. Expect nothing less. Love to see it. Awesome. Before we move on to the narrative itself, let's go ahead and make another cup of tea. All right, here's the tea cam. Got it going. Again, if you're just catching us, if you haven't been here the whole stream, drinking a Musa Taekwon Yin. Taekwon Yin leaves are known. They're processed in a certain way. So they kind of smash them and roll them and tear them a little bit. And it's supposed to release kind of certain flavors. But these ones, the Musa style, they're roasted, I believe. A traditional Taiwanese oolong, highly roasted with a tightly rolled style. And so what it does is it gives it like a smoky red flavor and color rather than just being green. Okay. So very, very good tea. Very good tea. Taekwon Yin is some of Jess's favorite tea. She loves oolongs. And this is just a different kind of oolong. Like I said, red. So what we'll do next is we'll read the account itself. Okay? Water's almost ready. Yeah, I'm liking this story. I'm liking digging into Gideon. Psalm 22, he's got a T-cam, but no corgi cam. Shaking my head. Yes, indeed. I was actually thinking that. I've actually got a webcam up here, and I could probably set it up to where it was a corgi cam. But like here in the office, Rory doesn't have a dog bed. So it'd be kind of weird. Like I'd have to figure out how to get a dog bed set up in here that she would use regularly. And then I could put the corgi cam on it. And then the question is how often to keep the corgi cam up, because if you have too many cameras on all the time, it gets distracting, right? All right, we're ready. I'm not saying it's an impossible task to get that going, but be semi-difficult, right? Semi-difficult. We could probably get it going, but, you know, wouldn't be the easiest. All right. One other thing I'm excited about, guys. James B. Jordan has written a commentary on the Book of Judges, and it's available for free online. Go to Biblical Horizons and find on the side panel, you can see resources to download for free, and his commentary on Judges is there for free. And it might also be in Logos. I'm not sure. There are some James B. Jordan books in Logos, but not too many. A great pour. Cheers, y'all. Second cup. Cheers, cheers. Psalm 22. I know channel points can be used to switch cams. Just don't ask me how. That sounds amazing. That's a good idea. That's a good idea. Bottoms up, as they say. Thank you, Edgemark. Tinker Teen. Then we'd all be watching Corgi Cam, not Tan Cam. She's not wrong. Not wrong. That's correct, Tinker Teen. Exactly right. Okay, guys, we're going to read the account, but here, I'll show you real quick. Here's the James B. Jordan commentary. All right. Pretty cool. Pretty cool that that's available. So I'm excited about that. We'll jump in soon. We'll jump in. All right. The people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord gave them into the hand of Midian 7 years. And the hand of Midian overpowered Israel. And because of Midian, the people of Israel made for themselves the dens that are in the mountains, and the caves, and the strongholds. For whenever the Israelites planted crops, the Midianites and the Amalekites and the people of the east would come up against them. They would encamp against them and devour the produce of the land as far as Gaza, and leave no sustenance in Israel, and no sheep or ox or donkey. For they would come up with their livestock and their tents, they would come like locusts and number. Both they and their camels could not be counted, so that they laid waste to the land they came in. And Israel was brought very low because of Midian. And the people of Israel cried out for help to the Lord. When the people of Israel cried out to the Lord on the account of the Midianites, the Lord sent a prophet to the people of Israel. And he said to them, Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, I led you up from Egypt and brought you out of the house of slavery, and I delivered you from the hand of the Egyptians and from the hand of all who oppressed you, and drove them out before you and gave you their land. And I said to you, I am the Lord your God. You shall not fear the gods of the Amorites in whose land you dwell. But you have not obeyed my voice. Brutal. Brutal. Cal Magic says, Block has a couple of commentaries on Judges that are worth a look. One is in the NIVAC. I love the NIVAC. Okay, we'll definitely consider jumping into Block. It's hard because we get so flush with different commentaries, different ideas, that it feels bad to continue consulting when you end up with so much content, right? But we're just getting into it for now. So we'll go ahead and see where we're at after these kind of first attempts, and then we'll definitely check Block out. Okay, so that's kind of the background. I actually think the background is very relevant here. Okay, I think the background is very relevant. So we need to consider that. The background information. Sorry, not sorry. That we'd be watching Corgi Cam? Yeah, not wrong, not wrong. Now the angel of the Lord came and sat under the terebinth at Ophrah, which belonged to Joash the Abizarite, while his son Gideon was beating out wheat in the winepress to hide it from the Midianites. Okay. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him and said, The Lord is with you, O mighty man of valor. And Gideon said to him, Please, my Lord, if the Lord is with us, why then has all this happened to us? And where are all his wonderful deeds that our fathers recounted to us, saying, Did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord has forsaken us and given us into the hand of Midian. And the Lord turned to him and said, Go in this might of yours and save Israel from the hand of Midian. Do not I send you? And he said to him, Please, Lord, how can I save Israel? Behold, my clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house. Okay, weakest and least. Because he's thinking according to material thoughts. And the Lord said to him, But I will be with you, and you shall strike the Midianites as one man. And he said to him, If now I have found favor in your eyes, then show me a sign that it is you who speak with me. Please do not depart from here until I come to you and bring out my present and set it before you. He said, I will stay till you return. So Gideon went into his house, prepared a young goat and unleavened cakes from an ephah of flour. He makes him a meal. This happens all the time. The meat he put in a basket, and the broth he put in a pot, and he brought them to him under the terebinth and presented them. And the angel of God said to him, Take the meat and the unleavened cakes and put them on this rock, and pour the broth over them. And he did so. Then the angel of the Lord reached out the tip of his staff that was in his hand and touched the meat and the unleavened cakes. And fire sprang up from the rock and consumed the meat and the unleavened cakes. And the angel of the Lord vanished from his sight. Then Gideon perceived that it was the angel of the Lord. And Gideon said, Alas, O Lord God, for now I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face. But the Lord said to him, "Peace be to you, do not fear, you shall not die." Then Gideon built an altar there to the Lord and called it, "The Lord is Peace." To this day it still stands at Ophrah, which belongs to the Abiezrites. That night the Lord said to him, "Take your father's bull, and the second bull 7 years old, and pull down the altar of Baal that your father has, and cut down the Asherah that is beside it, and build an altar to the Lord your God on top of the stronghold here, with stones laid in due order. Then take the second bull and offer it as a burnt offering with the wood of the Asherah that you shall cut down." So Gideon took 10 men of his servants and did as the Lord told him. But because he was too afraid of his family and the men of the town to do it by day, he did it by night. When the men of town rose early in the morning, behold, the altar of Baal was broken down, and the Asherah beside it was cut down, and the second bull was offered on the altar that had been built. And they said to one another, "Who has done this thing?" And after they had searched and inquired, they said, "Gideon, the son of Joash, has done this thing." Then the men of the town said to Joash, "Bring out your son, that he may die, for he has broken down the altar of Baal and cut down the Asherah beside it. He's in trouble." But Joash said to all who stood against him, "Will you contend for Baal, or will you save for him? Will you save him? Whoever contends for him shall be put to death by morning. If he is a god, let him contend for himself, because his altar has been broken down." Therefore, on that day, Gideon was called Jerubbaal. That is to say, let Baal contend against him, because he broke down his altar. So, name change. Now all the Midianites and the Amalekites and the people of the east came together, and they crossed the Jordan and camped in the valley of Jezreel. But the Spirit of the Lord clothed Gideon, and he sounded the trumpet, and the Abiezrites were called out to follow him. And he sent messengers throughout all Manasseh, and they too were called to follow him. And he sent messengers to Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali, and they went up to meet them. Then Gideon said to God, "If you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said, behold, I am laying a fleece of wool on the threshing floor. If there is dew on the fleece alone, and it is dry on all the ground, then I shall know that you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said." And it was so. When he rose early the next morning and squeezed the fleece, he wrung enough dew from the fleece to fill a bowl of water. Then Gideon said to God, oh man, sorry guys, hold on here. Oh dear. Hide user. Okay, now I need to do this. Until we can clear it. Let's see, is that enough? Did I clear it? No, I haven't. Oh, and it's still... I put hide, but it's actually not stopping it. Sorry, guys. I'm still figuring out how to do this on both. Remove. Port. Okay, now I need to do this again. There's got to be better ways to fix this. Are we getting hit on... Where are we getting hit now? Why are we being attacked from all sides? Okay, hold on here. I don't know how to get rid of this. Does that work? There we go. Much more better. Okay. Apologies, y'all. I still don't know how to mod on YouTube very well, so I need to figure that out. Madden, I had to watch an ad for Bosch Tools taking care of the job before I got to see you. Hope it gets you some coin. Thanks, Madden. I'm sure it'll get me a little bit. YouTube mods, Vex must be sleeping. Exactly. At least I know how to deal with that now, roughly. That's funny. That's funny. Oh, that's good, T. Yes. Yes. Okay. Now let me set this up different. Sorry, guys. Like I said, I'm still getting used to this. Good enough, I suppose. Okay, good enough. All right, we will continue. And I hope it stopped. Did it stop, guys? I think it did. I put enough blocks on there that you would think it would stop. If there was ever a chance of stopping it. Yeah. See, it's hard because I don't know which thing. I don't know if blocking them, hiding them. Well, see, block isn't even an option. Let me scroll up. You can time them out. You can report timeout. You can report timeout, all this other stuff. Hello, Jess. Welcome. What's going on with you? Good to see you. Sorry, I'm having trouble modding. Here, I'll make Jess a mod. That might help. Add moderator. Okay, now you can mod, Jess. I don't know how modding works on YouTube, but good luck. Hello, Kurt. I was going to say hi. Well, hi. Hello. Welcome. How are you doing, Kurt? I hope you're doing well. Happy Lord's Day. Just working on Gideon here. Let's keep going. Then Gideon said to God, "Let not your anger burn against me. Let me speak just once more. Please let me test just once more with the fleece. Please let it be dry on the fleece only, and on the ground let there be dew." And God did so that night. And it was dry on the fleece only, and all the ground there was dew. So weird. I was going to say hi, Matta. Kurt, you're Madden? Do you want to be modded? Do you want to be a YouTube mod? Could go poorly for me? Yeah, me too. I'm Madden. Okay. Add mod. Done. Hopefully that works. All right. Then Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, and all the people who were with him rose early and encamped beside the spring of Harod. And the camp of Midian was north of them, by the hill of Moreh in the valley. The Lord said to Gideon, "The people with you are too many for me to give the Midianites into their hand, lest Israel boast over me, saying, 'My own hand has saved me.' Now therefore proclaim in the ears of all the people, saying, 'Whoever is fearful and trembling, let him return home and hurry away from Mount Gilead.'" Then 22,000 of the people returned, and 10,000 remained. And the Lord said to Gideon, "The people are still too many. Take them down to the water, and I will test them for you there. And anyone of whom I say to you, 'This one shall go with you,' shall go with you. And anyone of whom I say to you, 'This one shall not go with you,' shall not go." So he brought the people down to the water, and the Lord said to Gideon, "Everyone who laps the water with his tongue, as a dog laps, you shall set by himself. Likewise, everyone who kneels down to drink." And the number of those who lapped, putting their hands to their mouths, was 300 men. But all the rest of the people knelt down to drink the water. And the Lord said to Gideon, "With the 300 men who lapped, I will save you and give the Midianites into your hand, and let all the others go every man to his home." So not only does he narrow it down, but he does this lapping thing. Okay? Lapping water qualifies them to stay. What on earth does that mean? So the people took provisions into their hands and their trumpets, and he sent all the rest of Israel, every man to his tent, but retained the 300 men, and the camp of Midian was below him in the valley. That same night the Lord said to him, "Arise, go down against the camp, for I have given it into your hand." But if you are afraid to go down to the camp with Purah, your servant, and you shall hear what they say, and afterward your hand shall be strengthened to go down into the camp. Then he went down with Purah, his servant, and the outposts of the armed men who were in the camp. And the Midianites and the Amalekites and the people of the east lay along the valley, like locusts in abundance, and their camels were without number as the sand that is on the seashore in abundance. When Gideon came, behold, a man was telling a dream to his comrade. And he said, Behold, I dreamed a dream, and behold, a cake of barley bread tumbled into the camp of Midian, and came to the tent, and struck it so that it fell and turned upside down, so the tent lay flat. And his comrade answered, This is no other than the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash, the man of Israel. God has given into his hand Midian and all the camp. As soon as Gideon heard the telling of the dream and its interpretation, he worshipped. And he returned to the camp of Israel and said, Arise, for the Lord has given the host of Midian into your hand. And he divided the 300 men into 3 companies and put trumpets into the hands of all of them and empty jars with torches inside the jars. And he said to them, Look at me and do likewise. When I come to the outskirts of the camp, as I do, when I blow the trumpet, I and all who are with me, then blow the trumpets also on every side of all the camp and shout for the Lord and for Gideon. So Gideon and all the hundreds of men who were with him came to the outskirts of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch, when they had just set watch, and they blew the trumpets and smashed the jars that were in their hands. Then the 3 companies blew the trumpets and broke the jars. They held in their left hands the torches, and in their right hands the trumpets to blow, and they cried out, A sword for the Lord and for Gideon. Every man stood in his place around the camp, and all the army ran. They cried out and fled. When they blew the 300 trumpets, the Lord set every man's sword against his comrade and against all the army. And the army fled as far as Bethshittah toward Zererah, as far as the border of Abel-Meholah and Tabath. And the men of Israel were called out from Naphtali and from Asher and from Manasseh, and they pursued after Midian. Gideon sent messengers throughout all the hill country of Ephraim, saying, Come down against the Midianites and capture the waters against them, as far as Beth-barah and also the Jordan. So all the men of Ephraim were called out, and they captured the waters as far as Beth-barah and also the Jordan. And they captured the 2 princes of Midian, Oreb and Zeb. They killed Oreb at the rock of Oreb, and Zeb they killed at the winepress of Zeb. Then they pursued Midian, and they brought the heads of Oreb and Zeb to Gideon across the Jordan. Then the men of Ephraim said to him, What is this that you have done to us? Not to call us when you went to fight against Midian. And they accused him fiercely. And he said to them, What have I done now in comparison with you? Is not the gleaning of the grapes from Ephraim better than the grape harvest of Abiezer? God has given into your hands the princes of Midian, Oreb and Zeb. What have I been able to do in comparison with you? Then their anger against him subsided when he said this. It's funny because that doesn't change anything, right? Like, no things are changed by that. And yet, they're like, oh, okay. Yeah, we're not mad anymore. All right. And Gideon came across the Jordan and crossed over, he and the 300 men who were with him, exhausted yet pursuing. So he said to the men of Succoth, Please give loaves of bread to the people who follow me, for they are exhausted, and I am pursuing after Zebah and Zalmunna, the kings of Midian. And the officials of Succoth said, Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna already in your hand, that we should give bread to your army? So Gideon said, Well then, when the Lord has given Zebah and Zalmunna into my hand, I will flail your flesh with the thorns of the wilderness and with briars. So this is when they refuse to give him bread, and he takes retribution. And from there he went on to Penuel and spoke to them in the same way. And the men of Penuel answered him as the men of Succoth had answered. And he said to the men of Penuel, When I come again in peace, I will break down this tower. Now Zebah and Zalmunna come again in peace. I'm coming in peace. I'm going to break your tower. Interesting. Now Zebah and Zalmunna were in Karkor with their army, about 15,000 men, all who were left of all the army of the people of the east. For there had fallen 120,000 men who drew the sword. And Gideon went up by the way of the tent dwellers east of Nobah and Jogbehah, and attacked the army, for the army felt secure. And Zebah and Zalmunna fled, and he pursued them and captured the 2 kings of Midian, Zebah and Zalmunna, and he threw all the army into a panic. Then Gideon the son of Joash returned from the battle by the ascent of Heres, and he captured the young men of Succoth and questioned him. And he wrote down for him the officials of the elders of Succoth, 77 men. Okay, so here's a 77. And he came to the men of Succoth and said, Behold, Zebah and Zalmunna, about whom you taunted me, saying, Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna already in your hand, that we should give bread to your men who are exhausted? And he took the elders of the city, and he took the thorns of the wilderness and the briars with them, and taught the men of Succoth a lesson. There you go. And he broke down the tower of Penuel and killed the men of the city. Then he said to Zebah and Zalmunna, Where are the men whom you killed at Tabor? They answered, As you are, so were they. Every one of them resembled the son of a king. And he said, They were my brothers, the sons of my mother. And the Lord, as the Lord lives, if you had saved them alive, I would not kill you. So he said to Jether, his firstborn, Rise and kill them. But the young man did not draw his sword, for he was afraid, because he was still a young man. Then Zebah and Zalmunna said, Rise yourself and fall upon us, for as a man is, so is his strength. And Gideon arose and killed Zebah and Zalmunna. And he took the crescent ornaments that were on the necks of their camels. Just so specific. Why so specific? Then the men of Israel said to Gideon, Rule over us, you and your son and your grandson also, for you have saved us from the hand of Midian. Gideon said to them, I will not rule over you, and my son will not rule over you. The Lord will rule over you. And Gideon said to them, Let me make a request of you. Every one of you give me the earrings from his spoil. For they had golden earrings because they were Ishmaelites. And they answered, We will willingly give them. And they spread a cloak, and every man threw in it the earrings of his spoil. And the weight of the golden earrings he requested was 1,700 shekels of gold, beside the crescent ornaments and the pennants and the purple garments worn by the kings of Midian, and besides the collars that were around the necks of their camels. And Gideon made an ephod of it, and put it in his city in Ophrah. And all Israel... I don't like saying that word, so I'm not going to. After it there, and it became a snare to Gideon and to his family. So Midian was subdued before the people of Israel, and they raised their heads no more. And the land had rest 40 years in the days of Gideon. We're going to get here to the end. Jerubbaal, the son of Joash, went and lived in his own house. Now Gideon had 70 sons, his own offspring, for he had many wives. So you have the 77 of Succoth contrast with the 70 of Gideon. And his concubine, who was in Shechem, also bore him a son, and he called his name Abimelech. And Gideon, the son of Joash, died in a good old age. He was buried in the tomb of Joash his father at Ophrah of the Abiezrites. And soon as Gideon died, the people of Israel turned again after the Baals and made a Baal Berit their god. And the people of Israel did not remember the Lord their God, who had delivered them from the hands of all their enemies on every side. And they did not show steadfast love to the family in Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, in return for all the good that he had done to Israel. Boom. End quote. All right. It's a long section, but it's good. Now, I'm trying to think of... Let's just go over to the big screen. And I just want to take down some broad themes. Doesn't mean we're going to go this direction. Just trying to think of some broad themes. As we specifically focus on, what we're going to preach on. So, in no particular order, the multiple requests for signs. Also, God narrowing down the numbers. Also, method of fighting. The torch and the trumpet and all that type of stuff. I wonder if the making of the meal should be a thing. And then what about the background info? Okay, that's a decent start. Now let's head back over here. And we're going to pull up James B. Jordan's commentary. Sorry, I don't have PDF in dark mode. This will have to do. So this is James B. Jordan, guys. Big fan of his work. Through New Eyes is his best work, most well known. And he talks extensively about typology and spiritual interpretation of biblical narratives. Okay? So I was very excited when I saw he had done a commentary on the book of Judges, and this whole chapter's on Gideon. So let's go ahead and jump in and see what he's got. Story of Gideon and his son Abimelech is not easy to divide up into sections. There are several apparent concerns in the text which are woven together in such a way as to overlap. The larger concerns include these: judgment for sin, oppression by Midian, Amalek, and Ishmael, and deliverance. God's maturation of Gideon's faith, Israel's drift toward a Baalistic statist order, judgment for sin, oppression from within the nation, and deliverance, the Lord's war against Baal. There are two periods of oppression, the first under Midian, the second under the false king Abimelech, which we didn't get to. Rather than give a list of all the interactions between God and man in Judges 6-9, it's simpler to summarize by noting that God judges Israel for her sins in Judges 6, Israel begins to repent, and God raises up a deliverer. God interacts with Gideon in a series of commands and promises, to which Gideon responds each time in faith. After the battle, Gideon passes a whole series of judgments, evaluations from the Lord, against the heads of the enemy army, against 2 Israelite towns, and against the tribe of Ephraim. Gideon's final command, speaking for the Lord, is that their king is God, not man. In his old age, however, Gideon begins to be unfaithful to this rule, and since Israel lusts for a king, God gives them one. Even though nothing is said about human repentance, God eventually does deliver Israel from Abimelech, this time without a human deliverer. Rather, God simply lets the evil destroy each other. The following is an outline of the text. Ooh, very in-depth outline. We already read through the whole thing, so we don't need to go into this. But we can absolutely, give this as a printout to our people, or, we can take some of it and summarize it ourselves, etc. Part and parcel of Baalism and of the non-Christian philosophy is statism, the absolute rule of man over other men by means of force. As we saw in chapter 2 of this study, the essence of Baalism as a philosophy is the belief that nature is ultimate and that man is the stimulator and thus the ruler of nature.
This is the biggest room of freaked out snowflakes you've ever seen in your life.
Much love. Thank you, Angie. Thank you. I appreciate that. Guys, Angie Jags with the bits donation. Appreciate you very much. Much love. 34 bits. Thank you. Thank you. Look at all those Corgo bits. Yes. Yes. Fantastic. Cheers, Angie. Cheers. Drinking a Musa Taekwon Yin. Awesome. Thank you so much for all of your love and support. I do appreciate that. All right. This also means that man is the stimulator and ruler of other men, since they are part of nature. The story of Gideon and Abimelech shows the connection between Baalism and statism, a theme that begins here and is carried forward through the rest of Judges. Angie, you are welcome, and thank you for streaming. It's my pleasure, Angie. I love it, I enjoy it, and I enjoy interacting with you guys and hanging out. So yeah, thank you. Hot fire from Tinkerteen. That's right, that's right. Hello, Equipping Faith. Equipping Faith says, I really love what you've been doing on YouTube for the past few years, PT. I have a holy jealousy that you get to do ministry in your life. Also, awesome glasses. Well, thank you so much, Equipping Faith. Much love to you. Thank you. You didn't have to say all those nice things, but I do appreciate it. And these are brand new. We got them like a week ago. I'm glad you like them. They're kind of shiny on the edge. They got the tortoise shell. They're really prominent, okay? These are kind of my aggressive, bold statement glasses, if you will. So I'm glad you enjoy them. Thank you so much, Equipping Faith. Those are very, very kind words. Thank you. Yeah, we'll see. I think YouTube and the internet is an unexplored space for many Christians. And so I'm trying to figure out how to do it, right? And it's been a wild ride thus far, and I don't plan on quitting anytime soon. We're in this for the long haul, Lord willing. I don't know what God has, of course, but Lord willing, we're in this for the long haul, and we'll try to do everything we can to be faithful with what he's given us. So thank you so much, Equipping Faith. Very, very kind of you. Appreciate that. Angie, those are great glasses for sure. Oh, that's awesome. You guys are cool. I was nervous to get bolder statement glasses, so I'm glad to hear all the awesome feedback. Thank you. Very nice. All right. First, we get 6:1-6. We already read this, so let's just go ahead and jump into James Jordan's comments. He says, God now begins to lose patience with Israel. That their sin centrally involved a Baalism is made clear from Judges 6:25, as we shall see. So provoked was the Lord by this recurring apostasy that he did not sell them into bondage this time. Instead, he gave them away. They were under incredibly severe oppression for 7 years, the number of fullness implying that there was no Sabbath for them during this time, even though there had been no Sabbath for them in Egypt. As before, the deliverance in the 8th year is a sign of a new birth or a new week for humanity. The severity of the oppression is noted in terms of several factors. The first is that the Israelites made caves, still visible in the time of the writer, I'm going to highlight this. I'm going to want to remember that one. The severity of the oppression is noted in terms of several factors. The first is that the Israelites made caves, still visible in the time of the writer, in which to hide. Man is made of dust, and the curse is for him to return to dust from which he came. To hide underground is always a sign of being under a curse in Scripture, as is the case of Lot, who dwelt in a cave after leaving Sodom, and who there sired two of the great enemies of Israel, Moab and Ammon. Later it will be the enemies who will hide in the caves. That's from Revelation. Second, each year for 7 years until the 8th year of deliverance, the enemy would sweep into the land with an army vast as locusts, 135,000 men from Judges 8:10. Like locusts, they would strip the land bare of vegetation as well as of livestock. Verse 4 identifies the area of oppression as the northern part of Israel. Apparently, the Midianites did not want to challenge the Philistines in the south. Third, the presence of the cruel Amalekites among the oppressors indicates the severity of the oppression. The leaders of the enemy were Midianites, apostate descendants of Abraham, Genesis 25:2. These Midianites had attacked Israel during the wilderness wanderings. On the advice of Balaam, the Midianites had sent their women into the Israelite camp to seduce Israel to sin, so that the Lord would be against Israel. Israel was delivered when Phinehas took a spear and skewered a fornicating couple. Gideon will be a second Phinehas. Also joining with the Midian were the sons of the east, a phrase that refers to Ishmaelites and other descendants of Abraham. These people were nomads, scavengers of the earth. They had no culture and no home, but wandered from place to place robbing and pillaging. They had rejected the cultural mandate of Genesis 1:26-28 and 2:15, and they were under the curse of Cain, living in a land of wanderings. Now the nomads oppress the dominion men. All right. Now verses 7-10. There is no instant deliverance this time. When they cry for the salvation, God is angry enough to make them wait. Indeed, rather than comfort them immediately, he sends a prophet to charge them with sin. A prophet is a mediator, one who speaks on behalf of two parties. Primarily, prophets are seen speaking on behalf of God to man, though they sometimes speak for man to God. The use of the prophets is a sign of God's grace, since to speak with God face to face is terrifying and even destructive. Thus, even in judgment, there is grace, for every judgment gives an opportunity to repent. There is no separate office of prophet in the Bible. God raised up prophets from time to time to speak his word and to act as reconcilers. Usually, however, it was the Levites who acted the role of prophet, since communicating truth from the groom to the bride was part of the Levitical role. Indeed, the Levites were the messengers, in Hebrew angels, for the Lord. Possibly then, this prophet was a Levite, and so here we see the Levites doing their job. On the other hand, possibly even at this early date, God was raising up prophets because the Levites were failing to do their job. My own inclination, given the theology of Judges as a whole, is to see this prophet as raised up because of the failure of the Levites, but we cannot say for certain. Gotta get some more tea going. Every historical judgment includes grace, except for judgment of personal death. This is because there is always a chance to repent until the last judgment. The fact that God brings judgment and says so is wholly of grace. After all, at this very time, as always, the Chinese people were being oppressed, but God did not, to our knowledge, send a prophet to explain judgment to them. Thus, they were not given opportunity to repent. The prophet here utters what scholars call the covenant lawsuit. The people had broken the covenant, and so they are charged in God's court. God reminds them he had delivered them from Egypt. This fact is reiterated to show that God is able to save and protect Israel, thus demonstrating that their present low estate has come about because God has brought it to pass by removing his protection of them. There's a principle in Scripture. The one who delivers us gains the right to rule us by virtue of the deliverance. Israel had forgotten this fact, and they continued to forget it even after the victory was won. God asserts this principle here in Judges 6:10. He had saved them, therefore he ruled them. He had told them not to worship Baal, the god of the Amorites, but they had disobeyed him. This makes it clear again, the basic problem is not oppression, but Baalism. Okay, that's interesting. So I don't know if I want to keep reading, because I didn't glean a lot from that. And I'm going to read it all eventually, but I don't know if I want to spend our time reading it now, right? Creation in 6 days. I'm just looking at what I have from James B. Jordan. This Festschrift, I've got to read that at some point. Handwriting on the Wall. This is a commentary on the book of Daniel. By the way, this commentary is like 1,000 pages. Okay, so just a couple here. Creation in 6 days, Handwriting on the Wall, Glory of the Kings. Okay, cool. So I don't have that Judges commentary here in Logos. Epitime, how fast can you read? I wouldn't say that I'm a particularly fast reader, but I can certainly read faster through material that I'm not like reading out loud the whole time. The thing I like to do, Epitime, is I like to listen on my phone, either on Audible, or Logos now has a feature where you can utilize the voice on your phone to read the book to you. And then I like to read it visually on the screen while the book is reading it to me, right? And it's that combo that's really helps me out. So I would say with that, man, I can read pretty quickly if I'm doing it that way. I still don't know how quickly that is though. You know what I mean? So I haven't like figured out how many words per minute or pages per minute or anything like that I read. But my point being, if we have something that's high quality, then we want to read it in depth, word for word, and I'll read it out loud here on the stream. But I thought James B. Jordan would be super high quality, but I just didn't get a lot out of that. Okay, he's got this Baalism framework that he's utilizing, and I don't know if I buy that same framework. And so, yeah, I don't know if I want to keep reading because it's going to be a lot here. Let's go ahead and make some tea as we think. Epitome, nice. I like reading by following the text and listening at the same time. It helps me a lot. It helps me a lot with retention. It helps me to keep up a fast pace. I avoid having that situation where I'm, asking myself, what did I just read? I don't do that as much when I'm being very deliberate like that. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm glad that works for you too. We'll give that a little bit of time. Yeah, working those human senses. Indeed. Much needed. Much needed. Here's what I think I want to do now. I think I want to run a passage guide. on this section of Judges. I think we'll get good value out of that. And I know you can't see the screen right now. Once I pour the tea, we'll go from there. But I do feel like a passage guide is going to help us quite a bit. So I'm just going to run one. Judges 6:1 to 8:35. Epitome, if I can, I would like to highlight quotes/points by writing at the same time, but too bad I can't write fast enough. Yeah, what I often do is I just highlight. So I don't write like you're saying because I'm the same. I can't write fast enough, but I do highlight. So as I'm reading through and focusing, I try to drop yellow highlights on the stuff that is grabbing my attention the most. All right, that's probably plenty. Cheers. Won't drink it yet. Water's too hot. So I pulled up a passage guide. And what I like to hit first and foremost out of a passage guide, especially when I have such a large pericope, is I like to hit like my study Bibles with their study Bible notes. And I also like to hit my single volume commentaries. So, you know, commentaries like the New Bible Commentary or the Bible Knowledge Commentary. Those are really good to start with because they have a high enough level treatment that you can get the broad themes pretty quickly. Okay. Hello, Jedi. What is up? Good to see you. Hi, tea looks good. Indeed. It is delicious. This is a really, really nice tea. I enjoy it very much. Good to see you, Jedi. Welcome. Hope you're doing well today. Happy Lord's Day. So let's go ahead and dig through. And I saw some new study Bibles when I updated my Logos. I got some new study Bibles here that I haven't referenced yet. So let's check some of them out. The Ancient Faith Study Bible looks interesting. Let's grab that and see what we get. Ooh, okay. Lots of stuff in this narrative. So it looks like the Ancient Faith Study Bible is a higher level ancient Christian commentary on the scriptures. That's what it looks like. So you've got early church fathers here being referenced and some of their quotes. Out of curiosity now, let's go open our ACCS and see if the exact same quotes are there. Probably. And we have another one as well. Maybe it's not here. Yeah, I think I put it right next to the ACCS, so if it's not coming up, it means I have no hits. There's another commentary that's quite similar to the ACCS. Let's look. So Origin, as long as there was justice in the land, therefore, that is, in those who inhabited the land, all the way down to, and we will be delivered to our own enemies when we forsake God's grace. Okay. The land was at rest, as long as sin was at rest, but the land is said to be disturbed, meaning those who inhabit the land, when the souls of the people began to move and dislocate sin. On and on and on. Down to here. We neglect the commandments of God and hold the precepts of Christ in contempt, and we shall be delivered to our own enemies when we forsake God's grace. So the ACCS quote is longer, which is good. I want it to be. The Ancient Faith Study Bible is going to give us the highest level hits. Okay? And that's what I prefer. And if we want to go into more depth, then we dig into the ACCS. Okay? So the Ancient Faith Study Bible has a good option. What's up, Matthew? Good to see you. Welcome. What it do? What it do, Matthew? All right. So they're just talking about the Midianites. 6:1 Origin. Right. That's exactly right. So this is Judges 6:1, and it's Origin's comments on Judges 6:1 from Origin's homilies on Judges. And boom, I've got this as well. You can see last I was reading it, I was utilizing huge font size. There we go. Homily 7. Origin's homilies on Judges. Where can I find that in the internet? So Origin, I want to say a lot of his works are being put for free online. So if you type something like this into Google, you could probably find it. Okay? You could probably find it. Now, I'm getting it out of this book, the Fathers of the Church series, Origin's Homilies on Judges. But I think you could probably find it if you dug around on Google. So yeah, good question. Good question. So I don't need those details. What does Ambrose say about 6:11-12? This is the angel of the Lord appearing. Ambrose says, when Jerubbaal, Gideon, as we read, was beating out wheat, he received a message from God in order that he might bring the people of God from the power of strangers into liberty. Nor is it a matter of wonder if he was chosen for grace, seeing that even then, being appointed under the shadow of the Holy Cross and of the adorable wisdom in the predestined mystery of the future incarnation, he was bringing forth the visible grains of the fruitful corn from their hiding places and was mystically separating the elect of the saints from the refuse of the empty chaff. Here's a perfect example of excesses in biblical allegory, right? I might want to show it just for that, right? When Gideon is beating out the wheat, he is mystically separating the elect of the saints from the refuse of the empty chaff. For these elect, as though trained with the rod of truth, laying aside the superfluities of the old man together with his deeds, are gathered in the church as in a winepress. For the church is the winepress of the eternal fountain, since from it wells forth the juice of the heavenly vine. I really like this Ancient Faith Study Bible. This is cool. This is a cool resource, guys. Look at that. That's pretty sweet. I wonder who contributes. Irenaeus, Origen, Justin Martyr, Tertullian, Clement of Alexandria, Ambrose, Augustine, Athanasius, John Chrysostom, Jerome, the Cappadocian Fathers, and more. This is a cool study Bible, guys. So I don't know if it's an excess, but it seems a little outside of what I would normally say. Yes. That's some of Vector's best work, the Pastor 7 Jam. Awesome, Angie. All right, Lurk, Star Wars time with the kids. No problem. Appreciate you hanging out, Kurt. Take care, okay? Matthew, Pastor Tanner, I am looking into purchasing an iPad or MacBook or iMac for the purposes of using Logos. Could you help guide me in the right direction? Yes, absolutely, Matthew. So, first of all, mobile is more powerful than it's ever been. And so if you're leaning in the direction of being a mobile user, it's a pretty good time to jump into one. One of the main things is that the Logos software itself, if you want to download and install the desktop application, it's very program intensive. It takes a lot of memory. It takes a very fast, powerful system to run it. So if you were going to go with MacBook or iMac, I would suggest that it be a pretty powerful one. So I don't know what your budget is, but when utilizing Logos, I like to use a very fast computer, okay? Now, if you're going to go with the app, an iPad can run the app very well, and that is going to be able to get a lot done. So my first big question, I guess, Matthew, would be, what are your needs and what would you typically be utilizing Logos for? Okay? Because that might guide your direction on whether or not you need the full desktop app or if a tablet sort of application would serve your purposes no problem. That's going to make a big difference there. Ambrose, it seems clear that the rock was a figure of the body of Christ. For it is written, they drank from the rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. That the angel then stretched forth his staff and touched the rock, from which fire went out, shows that the flesh of the Lord, being filled with the divine spirit, would burn away all of the sins of human frailty. Wherefore also the Lord says, I have come to send fire upon the earth. Again, you can see some of these excesses, right? And again, I'm not even necessarily saying he's wrong. I'm saying, according to current Protestant sensibilities, interpretations like this are, I want to say passé, but I think a Protestant would state it even stronger than that. Then the man, instructed and foreknowing what was to be, observes the heavenly mysteries, and therefore, according to the warning, killed the bull destined for idols by his father, and himself offered to God another bull 7 years old. By doing this, he most plainly showed that after the coming of the Lord, all Gentile sacrifices should be done away with, and that only the sacrifice of the Lord's passion should be offered for the redemption of the people. For that bull was, in a type, Christ, in whom, as Isaiah said, dwelled in the fullness of the 7 gifts of the Spirit. Someone perhaps will inquire whether Gideon does not seem to be lacking in faith, saying that after being instructed by many signs, he asked for still more. But how can he seem to have asked as if doubting or lacking in faith, who was speaking in mysteries? He was not doubtful then, but careful, so that we would not doubt. For how could he be doubtful whose prayer was effectual? And how could he have begun the battle without fear unless he understood the message of God? That's an intriguing read. That's a very intriguing read right there. Don't write off the early church fathers, y'all. Let's just read Augustine since we're still in chapter 6, and then we're going to move on to a different study Bible. And he shall come down like rain into a fleece, and like drops distilling upon the earth. The psalmist has reminded and admonished us that what was done by Gideon the judge has its end in Christ. His dry fleece, which lay upon the floor in the midst of the whole round world, signified the former people of Israel. Therefore Christ came down like rain upon the fleece, while the floor remained dry. Concerning this he said, I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. There in Israel he gave his command to the disciples, saying, Don't go in the direction of the nations or enter into the city of the Samaritans. Go first to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Yeah, very intriguing. All right. Matthew says, I would use Logos mainly for personal Bible study, reading commentaries and other resources. I wouldn't be creating a sermon or anything like that. Do you like sitting at a desk for this sort of reading, Matthew? Or would you like to recline in your easy chair with a nice cup of tea? Because it sounds like, for what you're talking about, personal Bible study, that an iPad would be perfect for you, right? Having a little tablet available to you, grab it, open it up, go through, look at your resources, all that type of stuff. I feel like running the app on a pretty good iPad is going to serve all of your needs and desires. with what you're talking about here. If you're not going to be actively taking a lot of notes, right, then you don't need the keyboard. You don't need the mouse. If you're just going to be reading, highlighting mostly, different things like that, the app will really serve your needs. So I guess that would be my next question. Are you an avid note taker? Would you want to be typing up a lot of notes, highlighting quotes, taking, clips, all that type of stuff? Because that's going to be easier on the desktop. All right. So that was interesting. I really like that study Bible. So that was the Ancient Faith Study Bible. Let's now try the Fire Bible. This one was requested for a long time by folks. And yeah, let's just see what it has. It's centered more around charismatic Christians. And it's focused on, obviously, the Holy Spirit, right? People have been requesting this one for a while, and I've never really looked through it. So let's see what it has to say here in a few sections here in chapter 6. 6:6 cried out to the Lord. Israel turned to God for help after all else had failed. They were desperate. Sadly, it often takes difficulties to get humankind to depend on God. Israel's main problem was a lack of faith in God. Satisfying self became the center of their focus. They looked to God only in times of crisis, or when nothing or no one else could help them. As New Testament followers of Christ, we have an equal responsibility to closely examine the basis for our love for God. Is it genuine? Do we truly appreciate God for who He is and what He has done for us? Or do we serve Him primarily for what we can receive from Him? Our love for Christ is genuine only if we are willing to follow Him at any cost. This may include trouble, suffering, persecution, and loss. Where are all His wonders? New Testament believers today should not be afraid to ask the same question. You can see the focus on miracles and things like that. God wants to do powerful things for and through His people. If such things are not happening, we must examine our depth of devotion and recommit ourselves to His plans until we once again see evidence of His miraculous power at work in individuals and churches. So that's his explanation. Hey, great question, Gideon. Interesting. Jedi says, hey, Pastor, you are like running in super speed. And you gave me a super nice piece to dig in and remember with that link. Thank you. Yeah, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. And that's just how I am, Jedi. I kind of talk. People tell me I talk too fast. I get comments like that on my videos on YouTube a lot. And, it is what it is. I try to hold myself back at times and try to pace myself better. I didn't pace myself well today in the sermon. I needed to do a better job. I talked too fast in my sermon today. So these are things I try to be aware of, right? I try to keep track of. So, yeah. Oh, hello, Angie Jags. Good to see you. Welcome. Boop. There we go. Jedi, you don't talk too fast. It's just your speed. It's good. All right, thanks, Jedi. I appreciate that. Equipping Faith says, I would say that if you do get a computer, get a Windows unit. You can get a nice computer with the specs you need to run Logos without overpaying for the Mac name. Yeah, that's often a brand preference, but I will say, Equipping Faith, you're describing my same brand preference. Logos is first and foremost designed for Windows, and while they have a Mac-based app to get it to work, I do prefer the Windows PCs and, getting a good machine that has kind of all those specs available. So, yeah, I totally hear what you're saying. That song was a bit much for me. All right. Okay, evidently the Lord mentioned and the phrase angel of the Lord refer to the same person. Ah, here's a key. I didn't notice this when we first read. Yep, look. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him and said to him, then look down here, and the Lord turned to him and said. That's very important. What's the Hebrew word for Lord there? Oh, I had my fact book links on. That's kind of cool. Okay, the Hebrew word for Lord here is the divine name right there. The divine name. Whoa! Whoa, Matthew! Holy smokes, guys. Look at Matthew. with the super chat. Thank you so much, Matthew. You didn't have to do that. Honestly, Matthew, you didn't have to do that. I was gonna help you, no problem, regardless. Wow. That's so kind of you, Matthew. Thank you for all the love and support. I appreciate you very much. Matthew says, I would not be taking notes as much. What iPad would you recommend? Thank you, Pastor Tanner. What are your top 5 Bible study resources in Logos that you would recommend? Wow. Okay. Good question. I would recommend, I think most of your newer generation iPads are going to make a difference. Now, the one thing I would look at is the specs on how fast the machine is, right? So, you know, and I'm not as familiar with Apple-based CPUs that are embedded in the system, so I can't give you specifics here. Like, I can't tell you like i7, i9, you know, that type of stuff. I personally run Ryzen on my machine. That's AMD. So I can't tell you those specifics. Those ones I don't know as well. Okay, but I would definitely look at those specifics and see how they ramp up in the generation of the iPad. And I would definitely look at an iPad that gives you kind of a higher level CPU. Like if the pricing was similar between two iPads, I would definitely run towards one which kind of ramps up the CPU, because Logos is a resource hog. It likes to use a lot of memory, etc. And even the app is streamlined, but it's one of those things where I really like that high performance. Okay. And then the specs, a tablet is very particular on the screen. Here, let me go to the big screen. A tablet is very particular on the screen, right? The sizing that it is can make a huge difference. I don't know if I have it here. I have different tablets with different sizes, okay? And you need to think about the position you're going to be reading in, because sometimes I want a tablet that I can basically hold in one hand, right? And so you're talking maybe like an 8-inch tablet for that. And you can kind of hold that in one hand, cup of tea in the other hand, and you can just kind of scroll with your thumb. That's pretty nice. Of course, you can grab it with two hands. But if you get something much larger than like an 8-inch, now you're having to manipulate it with two hands most of the time. Okay, so that makes a big difference as well. So think about that. And like I said, think about how much memory it has. If you're going to want to, you don't need to natively, are you going to have access to Wi-Fi while you utilize it? Probably. If you're going to have access to Wi-Fi while you utilize it, it doesn't need to have tons of memory, because you can just download the books you need, or you can just run them off the cloud while you're reading, okay? So if you're going to have Wi-Fi, I wouldn't worry about the memory on it so much. But if you're not going to have Wi-Fi, you're going to want to download many of your books to it natively so that you can navigate it in that way, right? As far as top 5 Bible study resources in Logos, I would get a good study Bible. And so you're looking at like the ESV Study Bible, or Faith Life's native resources are really good. Okay, so the Faith Life Study Bible is really good. I mean, we utilized the Faith Life Bible Dictionary earlier in this stream. Fantastic resource. And so you're going to want a good study Bible, a good dictionary, good Bible dictionary. So like the ISBE, International Standard Bible Dictionary, I believe, or Bible Encyclopedia, I believe, is good. A good commentary set would be very nice, right? Something like Pillar or Nikot, New International Commentary on the Old Testament, New International Commentary on the New Testament, something like that would be nice. Probably going to want a couple of really good translations that you like, something like ESV, you know, CSB, NIV, if you like that translation, something like that. So you're going to want a couple good Bibles, a good study Bible, probably a good 1-volume commentary, like the New Bible Commentary, and then probably 1 or 2 multi-volume commentaries sets, finances permitting. So we're talking Pillar, we're talking, you know, and Nikot, the Tyndale series. Tyndale is really good, and it's really good bang for your buck. Okay, let me show you the Tyndale series. Relative to the other commentaries, Tyndale is pretty cheap. That's these ones. these green and pink ones, they're relatively cheap and you get a lot of volumes for what you're getting, and they're pretty high quality for what you're getting as well. So I really like Tyndale, and that'll probably be pretty helpful to you also. Hopefully that helps. Really good question. Really good question. Cool. Yeah, thanks, Matthew. Again, appreciate all the love and support, and I hope that was helpful for you. Ooh, Equipping Faith. If you do not have it, Commentary on Judges and Ruth from the Kregel Exegetical Library by Robert Chisholm Jr. is pretty good. I'm pretty sure I do have it, and I probably wouldn't have referenced it unless you'd said something. Check it out, guys. Let's go ahead and reference this. Ooh, that's going to be nice. Thanks for the hot tip. Hot tip. Thank you so much, Equipping Faith. Appreciate you. Rommel, good to see you. How you doing? Happy Lord's Day. Hope you're doing well. Awesome topic for today. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm going to be going through several of the judges just because they're mentioned in the Hall of Fame of Faith in Hebrews. So, yeah, I'm excited for it. Equipping Faith, Matthew, for selecting commentaries, I advise you not to purchase a set, but purchase the best commentary on each book from multiple sets. That's really good advice, actually. Very, very good advice. If you don't want to buy like all of Tyndale, you can cherry pick commentaries here and there, and you can have, you know, one of the best commentaries on Genesis, one of the best commentaries on Leviticus, etc. And you can mix and match your commentary set so that you end up with top volumes in all categories. So it's really good advice. That's the advice that I believe D.A. Carson gives in his New Testament survey, commentary survey. So yeah, that's really good advice from Equipping Faith. And if you want to know that information, go to bestcommentaries.com, I believe it is. And that's really good for poking around and trying to figure out what those best commentaries are. Yeah. Great teamwork, guys. I think we put Matthew down a good path, good direction. All right. Let's keep going through the Fire Bible. Let's see what he says about the wool fleece. This is an interesting one. So let's see what he says. Gideon put out a fleece in order to build his confidence that God had truly called him to rescue Israel. Many people view this as an act of faith, although some see it as a lack of faith at first. But it seemed that Gideon's request for reassurance came from an attitude of trust, humility, and willingness to obey God. See, I think this is interesting. I like this reference. Because how do you know... How do you know that the spirit you're following is a godly spirit, right? How do you know it's the Holy Spirit? How do you know that the spiritual realities that are being presented to you are worth following or ought to be followed? You don't always know that. And so I think having these kind of examples is kind of helpful. You know, I think I initially would view this as a lack of faith. Oh, he needs a representation or something. But in reality, I can see I can see the point here. I can. God understands human nature. He knew Gideon's heart, so he graciously responded to the request. All God's faithful children have the right to ask him to strengthen and encourage their faith. This does not mean we should test God or demand that he prove himself when we really do not want to follow his more difficult instructions. But if we truly are willing to do what he asks, God will confirm his will to us in various ways. Those who are filled with and directed by God's Spirit sometimes may experience fear or uncertainty in difficult circumstances. In such times, God desires to encourage us and strengthen our faith, as long as we are sincerely ready to do what he has planned for us. Yeah, I think that's helpful. Okay, Fire Bible, worth referencing. Let's check one more study Bible, because this one I just got with Logos 10. So I want to check this one, the NIV Bible Speaks Today study Bible. And I want to check and see how it looks in the study Bible form. And then we're going to check out the Kregel by Chisholm, referenced by Equipping Faith. Let's go down to... Man, this seems pretty cool. Ooh, I like this. These questions at the bottom of each. That's great for application. Let's see. To judge by appearances, Gideon is anything but a mighty warrior, as he skulks in the winepress. However, the angel may be speaking actual truth. Gideon needs only to have his natural courage coaxed out into the open. Or maybe this is the language of irony and faith, ironic at the time, but prophetic of what God will make of Gideon in the future. The central theme of these chapters is that God will work out his purposes in those who are truly helpless. Or Israel would boast against me, he says. My own strength has saved me. It is of the essence of the story that Gideon is not at the beginning a mighty warrior. His courage grows so gradually, and so it makes sense to suggest that the angel is speaking prophetically about what God intends to make of him. What God will make of Gideon is then all the more remarkable. We should not miss the numbers theme, increasingly clear as the angel presses relentlessly on. The Lord is with you, with thee singular, as older translations make plain. Go in the strength that you have, you will strike down the Midianites, all those countless hordes. So the Lord sets the scene. The message of Gideon clearly has something to do with the weakness of God's people, the apparently overwhelming strength of the enemy, and with God's methods of perfecting his own strength in weakness. God is adamant that his people recognize that strength comes from the Lord. How easy do we find it to admit our own helplessness? In what areas of our lives are we tempted to rely on our own strength, and what brings us to our senses? Fantastic these little questions here at the bottom. These are great for application, right? Really, really cool. I like this study Bible. This is cool. Look, they do it at the end of each little pericope that they assign. Very nice. I believe these are summaries. So this is the NIV Bible Speaks Today notes, study Bible. I believe these are summaries from the Bible Speaks Today commentary set. So to check, let's go ahead and check out Bible Speaks Today Judges. It's this one, I believe. And let's go to the same section. The unlikely choice. 6:11 to 16. Sorry, guys. I'm having fun digging through this. Yep, right here. To judge by appearances, Gideon is anything but a mighty man of valor as he skulks in the winepress. However, some commentators take it that the angel is speaking actual truth. Gideon needs only to have his natural courage coaxed. So it's a direct quote from here, right? But it's cool because they've gone through and they've refined all of this material. If you want more detail, you can go here. But this is why it's great to start with study Bibles and one volume commentaries, guys, because this might get you everything you need, or it might tell you, oh, I need to dig deeper, right? I need to dig deeper. Yoshi, did you say Gideon with a J sound? Gideon? I don't think I did, but maybe I did. Ollie says hi. Well, hello. Hello, Ollie. Hello, Jesse. Awesome. Equipping Faith. Matthew, another good site to reference for that purpose would be the top 5 commentaries by Ligonier Ministries. Yeah, very nice. Very nice. Cool. Well, I like that study Bible too. Yeah, those are good hits. Okay, let's check out the Kregel. And ooh, you can see this is a little more in depth. He's got Hebrew in here. Okay, interesting. Yeah, let's just read his little section here on taking baby steps. This looks pretty cool. The Lord is a jealous God who demands the exclusive worship of his people. It is not enough to build an altar to the Lord if one leaves the altar of a competing god standing. In their initial encounter, the Lord forced Gideon to recognize his presence and power and brought him to the level of genuine worship. Next, he pushed Gideon one step further and demanded that he display his loyalty by destroying his father's Baal altar and Asherah symbol. He instructed Gideon to tear down the pagan altar, build a new altar to the Lord in a prominent place, and offer up one of his father's bulls as a burnt offering, using the wood from the Asherah pole for fuel. Enlisting the help of his 10 servants, Gideon obeyed the Lord's command, but he did not yet display the same degree of courage that would characterize his later exploits. Fearing the repercussions of his actions, he carried out the Lord's instruction at night rather than during the daytime when everyone could see him. Gideon's apprehension is testimony to Israel's spiritual corruption. The whole town seems to be quite attached to this pagan altar, and heightens the dramatic tension of the narrative. This is not simply a story about one man turning to God. His renewed devotion will meet with opposition. He will come to conflict with his own community. Morning's light brings with it a surprise for the townspeople. Hebrew, Hine, I believe that's Hine. Yeah.
Hine.
Look invites us to view the scene through their eyes. When they arrived at the pagan cult site, they saw the effects of Gideon's nighttime efforts. As we already suspect, Gideon's activity could not be kept secret. When the townspeople discovered he was the culprit, they demanded that his father Joash hand him over for execution. Their words are sadly ironic and symptomatic of their apostasy. Gideon had obeyed the law of Moses, but a whole Israelite town was ready to kill him for it. Though Joash owned the pagan altar, his attachment to his son seems to outweigh his devotion to Baal. His words may even indicate he had become skeptical of Baal's power. The introductory question suggests that Baal should not need men to fight his battles for him. The next statement is quite bold. Joash declared that whoever tried to vindicate Baal would end up dead by morning. Was this simply a warning to the crowd, or warning to the crowd that Joash would kill anyone who tried to lay a hand on Gideon, or was he implying that Baal would kill anyone who dared to defend his honor, as if he were incapable of vindicating himself? Or was his faith in Baal shaken, causing him to suggest sarcastically that Baal's defenders would end up dead by morning because their god lacked the power to defeat the attacks of his enemies? After all, the reality of the broken altar suggested as much. In his final statement, Joash argued that a god ought to be able to defend his own honor when someone smashes his altar. He should not need help from mere men. Joash then boldly gave his son a new name, Jerubbaal, and declared, "Let Baal fight with him." Baal's subsequent failure to defend his honor, through those see chapter 9 and our comments in this regard, demonstrated his weakness and unworthiness to be worshipped by Israel. That's pretty good. All right, so we'll put this down here. And this is, I just want to put a note because Joash defending Gideon is a big deal. Joash defending Gideon. It's a pretty big deal. Cool. All right, guys. Well, hey, I think that's a good stopping point. Been going a little bit over 2 hours, and we've got a bedtime routine now that we need to jump into. Need to do family devotional together, probably bath time, all that good stuff. So let's go ahead and call it here. And I think we made a lot of progress. We've got a good understanding of the theme now, the major events that happened. And yes, the Rory dog needs to be included in all of that, of course. And so we're on a good path. We've got a lot of good places to reference now. And we know the general theme of the story. We've got plenty of broader topics to dig into. I'll need to be doing some more in-depth, faster reading off stream. But we're going to start navigating our way towards the answers here on what we need to jump into, right? So Yoshi says, I'm sad Logos Android can't read Koine Greek. Oh, really? Does it default to modern Greek? Interesting, Yoshi. Yeah, that's rough. Jedi, thank you, Mr. Tanner. Got that spark I needed. Well, great. Awesome, Jedi. It was so good to see you, and thanks for chatting. Yeah, enjoyed your presence with us. It was a fun stream, guys. I enjoyed hanging out with you, and we will hopefully see you tomorrow. That's my goal. I hope to be able to stream tomorrow night. I like to get good progress on the sermon early in the week because then it just opens things up for me. So hopefully we'll be able to stream tomorrow night. Same time, same place. Well, maybe not the same time, but roughly similar times. And yeah, we'll catch you guys then, okay? If not, I may not be able to stream. I don't want to make any promises. But if not, we'll probably see you a little bit later in the week. All right? Appreciate you all very much. Take care. God bless.